Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Hit us up at DJ@ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, your co-hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Margaret, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, because we say that at the end of every show, but we mean it at the beginning of every show too.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Despite our topic tonight, which is going to be up on the website, and our topic tonight is an easy one. It's what is the meaning of life?
The essential question.
The essential question. And, you came up with this. This is a question, of course, that everyone ponders at one point or another in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it has certainly been the subject of, in many cases, the life's work of many philosophers, many great thinkers.
It's been the struggle for a lot of people.
And it's a struggle, certainly. And we're going to put all that to bed tonight.
Oh, we are we?
You can just take this. We're going to put a period at the end of this sentence, and that'll be done. We can move on.
Oh, all right.
But no, in truth, you came up with this because it was really from the point of view of, this is a very large question, what is the meaning of life? But from the point of view of the essential sort of despair which many people approach that question with, or what I should say is, to frame it a little bit differently, is there are those who explore this question and arrive at the conclusion that life has no meaning, and that everything, because everything comes to naught, that all things grind down to nothing under the sun, that we come into existence for this brief spark. We're here for whatever we do. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, the universe continues on uncaring, and so life is meaningless. It's pointless. Why live it? That's the I would say unfortunate, but let's just say it is a conclusion that people have come to. In some cases, many brilliant philosophers, Nietzsche comes to mind, and there are others who basically say, life isn't worth living because it has essentially no meaning.
Right. What intrigued me was the fact that we as human beings ask this question continually, and it rises up at different points in your life, especially since you're pursuing something, you're trying to live it, and then something comes up and you're like, well, why am I doing this? What's the reason for me to do this? And if there's not a valid reason, you basically, you want to throw that aside. It's like, well, I'm not doing that. You can't convince me I need to do that. And my question was, where does this question emanate from? What part of you is asking this question? And that's what I found fascinating, because most people sort of lump their experience and consciousness together in this giant ball, say, oh yeah, that's me, their identity, and have not stopped to experience the different parts of you that are speaking. So the question of what is the meaning of life, what part of you is asking this question? Because it's not all of you.
No, it's not. That frames the question. Is in essence what you're saying is, why do we ask this question in the first place. And I think the other part that you just said is that it's a search for identity. Meaning in this case isn't, the definition of life. That's not what we're really searching for here. What we're looking for is purpose. We're looking for identity. We're looking to give a value to our individual lives, or a value to life in general. So value is essential in this question. You have to say, well, to what purpose, to what utility, for what reason am I even here? Do I have a value? Do I have a purpose? Who am I? It's an essential identity question.
That I believe stems. That's the core of the issue of who am I. And that's when you begin to understand that there are different levels of a life experience, how you think and how you feel, and what you do versus how you are. All that arises when the mind comes up with this question, like, wait a minute, I know how to think, or mostly think, and when I feel, what am I feeling? Is it just emotions? Where does it stem from? I mean, it's exploring the experience being alive and beginning to distinguish between nuances and subtleties, as well as, is this a real experience, or am I imagining it?
Well, that definitely comes in. That some philosophers have reached the through sort of this the Latin term is reductio ad absurdum, but through this sort of a process rather of deduction, they've reached this point where, can I even objectively discern whether there's anything else in the universe but myself? And then, can I even trust my own objective perception of myself?
Mm-hmm.
And so it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So I likened it to, they're drawing a circle around this question of meaning, or this question of really what is life. And as the circle shrinks, and that's sort of what reductio ad absurdum means, you're kind of reducing it down to its smallest and most quote unquote understandable portion. But as you shrink it and shrink it and shrink it, you suddenly come to the conclusion that it is infinitely shrinkable down to nothing. You can't objectively assign a value to your life, or to your experience, or to whether or not it's even actually happening. And you reach this sort of ultimate nadir of non-provable existence, of non-provable experience, and people fall off the edge. They trap themselves within an ever-shrinking wall of, what can I prove? What can I value? What can I actually hold, in essence, and find as sort of an absolute? And as it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, they get more and more depressed.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. And you can see how you get there. You can see that, Nietzsche likened it to, seeing those who were all around him as sort of being half asleep or asleep. So did Plato in the cave, seeing that all others around us are sort of, you're like, I've awoken, and now everyone around me is still asleep, and I'm looking at them, and they're just pursuing their mundane and meaningless lives, and here I am alone on this mountaintop, unable to even wake the sleepers, as Plato would have said, and it gets them farther and farther and farther away, and off maybe into a corner, which gets darker. and more. I don't want to say self-destructive, but let's say self-denying or self-annihilating. One isolates oneself first from your peers, saying, well, they don't see what I see. And then one isolates oneself from experience, and then they isolate themselves from themselves. And it kind of it flies up its own, little nether end there, we'll say for the PG version. It flies up its own little nether end until it just goes boop, and it's done. Some of these nihilists and some of these, there's also sort of a thread of atheism that runs through this. They get to the point where there is nothing. It becomes a very vast and empty universe in which there is nothing, and where one even gets to the point where the perceptions of nothing become nothing, and it seems an ultimate sort of denial of being, and yet they get there by seemingly inescapable logic.
Right.
And so they become crushed by it. It almost says, say, well, I'm just going to buy the lie because I can't live with the truth. It's like either I live with the truth and I just off myself and just and basically pull the plug on the universe, or I say, well, I'll have a beer and go down to the pub and hang out with the guys and just forget about all this because it's too hard.
Well, you've narrowed your experience down to your mental capacity, how you logically think that life is or should be, or it's this, it's that, and all you're doing is going down. I liken it to the motion of water going down a drain until you fall in.
Until you fall in.
And the only thing that's on the other side is not pretty.
Well, and right, or I think they say that there's nothing. You fall into a dissolution.
So you look at that and you go, okay, so what that means to me is that your mental side will only bring you down into this dead world. If you live only by mental, strictly mental, nothing else, that's the end point. You can't explain why you're here. Instead of looking at it in terms of this is a mystery, can you make room in your own mind that you can't understand this? This is a mystery. And I think that's a key point, because there are those that refuse to embrace the idea that there is mystery out there. And mystery can be experienced, but not classified and organized into a file. You neatly put into a box somewhere. It's like, no. Experience is embracing your life path, and mystery is a key element of it. Can you make room for the fact that you're not going to understand everything?
I think that's very key to this. This question, this what is the meaning of life question, immediately puts two bounds, which if you don't cross them, it puts life into a box. Something which you can put into a box is defined. It has a meaning. It has now a boundary. You say, well, this is life and this is not life, because life has a meaning. Okay, so once you do that, you've put up the first wall. And the second wall is we're going to figure it out. So now it's all on the mental side. Now we are applying reason to something which is essentially unreasonable. So that's where the trap begins. You actually set the trap and spring it on yourself. You set the trap, the trap is posing the question in this form. It's not that you shouldn't pose this question. This is an entirely appropriate question. In fact, it can lead you to the ultimate actual, let's say, understanding of what is life. But when you put the word meaning on life, and I think Gautama had this exact same sort of revelation. He looked at life, and you had the exact phrase. I'll say it wrong, but he looked at life as all life is suffering. But it was three things that
Yeah, all life is suffering, and it was based on his observation of sickness, old age, and death.
Hmm. So these plagues, if you will, these plagues of sickness, old age, and death, which afflict all. In other words, even if you don't get sick, you're going to get old, and you're going to die. And in between your incarnation and your discorporation is nothing but suffering. That's what this was Buddha's big thing. He's like, man, and think of it in the point of view of a very rich, very pampered man who then is met with culture shock and says that not only was my whole life before this a lie, but there's no escape. Now that I know this essential awakening, now that I know this, we're all going to die. This is terrible.
Well, he was born into a very rich family. His father was ruler, and his father was trying to groom him into the position of being the next in line.
Mm-hmm.
So they had everything. They were rich. He had any luxury you could possibly imagine, and his father was trying to get him involved in the sensual side of life, with food and women and drink and just enjoying yourself constantly.
This sounds terrible.
Well, and then that's how when he discovered for the first time, because he was not allowed to have anybody old around him. He had never seen an old person before. And I think he was going from one palace to another, and he spotted this old man on the road, and he said, "What is that?" Yeah, and then again, what's wrong with that person who was sick?
Mm-hmm.
And then a funeral procession. So that's all he needed. His father was desperately trying not to allow him to go down this road,
right?
Because I think it was foretold at his birth.
Oh.
And since his dad knew this, he was trying to make sure his son was going to be on this one trek. But all it took was for him to see old age, suffering, and sickness and death, for him to go into, wait a minute.
And the first realization was very similar to Nietzsche, very similar to Descartes and all these guys, is that it's all for naught. It means that all that I've been told is a lie, and that life for all of us, even the most pampered and rich, is old age and suffering and death.
And so he basically said, no, this is not true, and had gone off to be an ascetic, away from everything. And this is why he came up with the Eightfold Path. The 8 ways. All life is suffering, but there is a way out of suffering. And then he presented the Eightfold Path,
right.
Which is, I always wondered when this was introduced, why it was so mental. When you look at the Eightfold Path, it's like, what is going on? Why is it so mental? You have to, because there's a right way of doing things and a wrong way. you had to figure out if you were doing it the right way or not.
Right.
And it was, the right way to meditate.
Right action, all those things.
Exactly. And so it takes a lifetime, at least, if not more, according to the Buddhists, multiple, to be able to walk this path. But now I understand at this point that what he's doing is he's quieting the mental part of the human to allow it to begin to enter into the fuller experience of being alive and not thinking about life.
But if we move ourselves backwards, that's correct, of course. But Buddha's initial attack at this was mental, and even now, Buddhism, although it is certainly striving towards a different end, attacks this whole question from it's the same actual question. What is the meaning of life? Buddhism asks it in many different ways, but it's essentially, if you do this Eightfold Path and these right actions and these right things, you will understand the meaning of life. It's, again, very mental. It's very any time you hear the X number of steps to enlightenment, you're talking about a mentality-based sort of philosophy, and all of these are essentially the mind applied to that which is beyond the mind, and in our conceit, because the mind is an incredibly powerful thing that we all possess, and it does so much for us, but in our conceit we feel that it can do all things. And so the mind must be able to figure out this essential question: what is the meaning of life? Well, I can follow the Eightfold Path, or I can follow this way or that way. But I think, what you just said is the ultimate goal, and this is the secret, of course, of all these things that move you towards an enlightened state. The ultimate goal is to get the mind out of the way.
Right.
And the Buddhists are using the mind to overcome the mind, which is kind of it's like a jujitsu kind of thing. It's kind of cool. It's like we will use our negatives against to become the positive, or whatever it is. And that's good, because you seduce people with this like, oh, I can write this down in my day timer. I can write down the 8 steps I have to do, and I can practice them, and I can turn it into a discipline, and become disciples of the discipline, and people love that. People love that because it feeds all those little mental checklists and dopamine hits and all the stuff which makes us just, oh, I've done all my rightful paths today. I can have an ice cream. I've done all my goody things.
Right. I'm being good.
Being good.
Defining good in your own human terms. But it's fascinating because you really have to experience this first to understand what it means when you're asking the question. If people want to continue just making little boxes to try to feel better about life, the answer will only be these little boxes, a surface thing. You're not even touching into your deeper self. It's all, it's like Legos. I'm going to make this, snap this in, this color, look, I've made a boat. Let's see if it floats.
Lego boats don't float.
Pretty much. They make a wonderful blurping noise when they sink. But when you think of your own process, are you satisfied with that answer? Because people, they twist and they turn and they try to find an answer, and then they hang on to it, and you're like, okay, are you happy with that? And inevitably they are not. There's an emptiness still, an emptiness still. And then the ones that are trying to get lost in the body, doing the next thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing, whatever it may be. What is that called? The extreme sport people. It's the next hit of adrenaline. But when you ask them, are you happy with that? And they're like, I'm only happy if I'm in the hit.
Yeah, well, I think certainly, you have those who are looking at life as identity, as accomplishments, as these things, and this we know exhausts itself, because you come to the end of your physical prowess, you come to the end of your mental acuity, you come to end, in fact,
and you can accumulate a lot of things and you're still unhappy.
Yeah.
And the key is, are you honest with yourself with this? Asking your own question. Talk to yourself. Like, am I happy with this?
Well, that's self-examination, yeah. You come to the end of all these things. You come to the end of money, of success, of fame, of fortune, and one of the paths to the end of the question of what is the meaning of life is that you lose your life. That all these things can be accelerated. That you can come to a position where not that you've given the things away or that they've been sort of worn out, but they've been taken away from you. Your essential abilities to to do things or to become involved in things, you reach a crisis point.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, a crisis point will take people over to the other side. They'll get past what is the meaning of life, but it oftentimes is very near the end of their lives for whatever reason. So there's a clue there. You see people who have reached a certain peace with the fact that they're going to die, and they can be of any age. We saw it in Christopher. You reach a certain peace in the fact that you're going to die and realize that is not the meaning of life. The meaning of life is not to escape death even. The meaning of life is not to live forever. The meaning of life is not to never change. I mean, how often have Madison Avenue? All they're trying to do is to teach you that somehow you're never supposed to age, grow fat, grow thin, grow old, get a gray hair, all these things. Every commercial is telling you that you are going to be an endlessly potent, beautiful, thin, powerful being for the rest of eternity if you only take this product. And that lie, that chimera.
Yes,
Go ahead.
and it's that yearning.
Exactly.
It's intrinsic to the human being, that yearning, and it gets capitalized and used against you because you're thinking, well, okay, if I just do the surface product, then I won't age, I won't get wrinkles, I won't get whatever it is, the offending problem may be.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah, and when you realize that there's no real comfort in that. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on your wrinkle cream, $500 for a jar or something. It's like, no, this is supposed to work, but then nothing. So is maintaining this concept of beauty the only thing that drives you? What is driving you to that sense of peace with yourself? Because all that is because you're unhappy with what you're seeing.
Right, or you're being told to be unhappy. Well, I think what we're going to do, though, is go into the studio. We're going to take along with us this question of what is the meaning of life. And on the other side, I promise you, we're going to put a period at the end of the sentence, and you're never going to have to worry about this again.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief, Dev, is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir. There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
We really have to broadcast during the breaks. Anyway, we are talking about the meaning of life tonight. And this half hour is the one you want to listen to, because this is where we explain it all.
Okay.
Well, so I think we've set this up nicely, so I don't want to, no spoilers, but here's the nub. Okay, here's the actual takeaway from this whole thing. The whole idea of what is the meaning of life. That question is essentially itself meaningless. It is a meaningless. It is certainly a question. It has words which mean something. Each one of those words can be defined. However, the question itself is our own ego's take on it. It's the ego's take on the ego. It's our mental machinations, of which we are all very good at from the beginning of our lives to wherever we are in them. Our mental sort of construct, very sort of subtly questioning itself about how important and wonderful it is. The ego loves the ego. It loves it to death, and it wants it to be very, very important. And it wants it to have one essential thing above all other things. It wants it to have a meaning. It wants to look at itself, which is what the ego loves to do, and say, gosh, you're the most handsome, beautiful, powerful thing in the world, and I just love you. And that's the problem with this question. This is the ego stroking itself.
Oh. Oh, my.
Oh, my. And that was part of what the break was. But moving on, what is the meaning of life? And that's what Gautama gets to, and if all the nihilists would just turn around and face the other way so they wouldn't be staring at this little dark navel spot that they've kind of worked themselves into, turn themselves around and stare the other way and say, the whole idea that we can assign a meaning to life is in and of itself a null and void question posed by not you, not the essential you, not the existence you, the being you. It's posed by the ego you, by the I.
So what you're saying is, the question that rises is, what is the meaning of my life?
Exactly. We don't mean life broad. We mean me. What is the meaning of me?
Right. Which is, you think about that, it's fascinating because the ego concept is exactly that. Who you actually are is much greater than the concept you think you are.
Exactly.
And that usually is a mind blower when it first occurs, because you're thinking, well, aren't I all my likes and dislikes? I like this, I don't like that. Aren't I? What is the question when the kids hit teenage years? Is I'm trying to find myself.
I'm trying to find myself with both hands. Here I am. They're trying to find, and that is this is a wonderful thing you just said. The teenager, the ego is an essential, eternal teenager, because the ego is always in a crisis. It always wants meaning. It wants to be paid attention to. It wants to be important. It wants to be loved. It wants to be needed. It wants to be stroked and made happy. And the ego is basically your inner, let's say your inner 2-year-old, but really it's your inner teenager. It's your inner angst. It is a very needy and quite small part of you, but we blow it up and we feed it mental concepts, and we feed it, the creams and the cars and it becomes this thing which can get, at least from the point of view of inflation, so big that it appears to be all of us, and it really wants that illusion to hold supreme. The ego really wants to be all of you, and then the ego poses the ultimate question, which can't be answered: what is the meaning of my life? And leaves out the my, but it's there.
Well, when people are coming close to death, that's usually the question. What was the meaning of my life?
Was it all for naught?
Or was it all for naught?
And that's the ego trying desperately to deny the fact that the ego doesn't like the fact that it's not going to continue on, that it is really over for the ego.
And I think that's really the core of what we're talking about. The soul goes on, but the soul is not the ego. And I find that amazing, because most people equate soul and their ego as the same thing. And to begin to understand that all the life experiences you've had were pushing you in the direction to expand your consciousness past your ego, past your thoughts, into a fuller state of being. And if you think about that, if you understand that your consciousness is so broad, but it got narrowed down into this two-dimensional construct of ego and mental capacities. I wonder sometimes, I really wonder if the whole purpose of you living in this form, in this body, is to break all of that. To break that so that you may live freely. To understand that that form that you are constructing around you, this idea that this is who I am, this is my identity, I have this, I have that, I do this, I do that. Understand that that's a prison. And you need to expand into a fuller being state.
I would say that's absolutely right, and in fact, I think it's a little bit even the other way around. And in essence, the being gives birth to the ego through incarnation, but the ego isn't content with that. If you look very closely at the first experiences of life, they are from an egoless point of view. The infant looks at the world as amazing, unfathomable experience. And in essence, it's not thinking about anything, it's just drinking it in. And then the ego rises, and it wants to put thought onto it. Now, I'm not going to denigrate thought. Thought is an essential part of who we are. But thought is conceited. Thought wants to be everything. I think, therefore I am, which was Descartes' wonderful revelation, is exactly that. It's Descartes before Dehors. It is I think before I am. And it is I am before I think. And this is always the case. But the ego wants it the other way around.
Well, people take that phrase from Descartes and they isolate it, saying that he was proving that he is, how do I say this? He was trying to prove existence. So he's saying, okay, I think. That means I exist. That's how he was working it.
No, I agree. I'm being unfair to Descartes.
Okay, and you can turn that into I feel, or I appreciate, like when you're appreciating beauty. Therefore, I am. I walk. Therefore, I am. I breathe. Therefore, I am. He was a mathematician. So these concepts, thought concepts, I think, I am.
He was using it as evidence.
Yes, it was a proof.
It was a proof. Very, very good, because he was a mathematician. He was using it as a proof of the amness. But people have taken it and turned it into the ego. Lovely, again, wants to turn it into I think. That means thinking is everything. Yay, it's me, the ego again. So let's get stuck on Descartes. The point of the Buddha also, his eightfold path, the rightness of the path, and all these things, as you said just last half hour, was to still the mind. And people say, oh, I'm stilling my mind. I'm thinking about stilling my mind. I'm thinking about stilling my mind. The true enlightenment, the stroke of illumination, is exactly that you realize that you cannot think your way into enlightenment. Enlightenment is that which you rise above thought. You rise, if you say rise, you realize that below all thought, below all experience, below all things which we say are proofs of our amness, is our amness, our existence. And this is Tolle, and we're happy to give him credit, because he says, and rightly so, that all this is just form. And when you're bound up in form likes to try to find meaning. And the problem with form trying to find meaning in form is that it realizes, quite rightly, that nothing is permanent, that nothing lasts forever, that form is in and of itself. If you really use your reason very, very, very carefully, you can realize that form is meaningless. And you're right on the tipping point. You're right on the precipice of the revelation. Form is meaningless, and that's good. It should be meaningless. Yay, if you just step one
Take one more step.
courageous step forward and say, form is meaningless, yet I still exist. I am beyond form.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, what is beyond form? Eternity is beyond form. I am eternal. That all that is here, all that is experienced, is nothing more than, as you said, it is that which allows me to realize that I am beyond form, that I am a consciousness which has a body, which has experience, which has thought, which has all these things. But none of it can exist unless you have the amming first. And then you realize, where does the amming come from? Well, it comes from source. And source can be spirit, it can be God, it can be the enlightenment, the Buddha, it can be what you wish it to be. But it is. It is.
Well, it is outside of what you wish it to be. Okay? It's beyond any concept or construct a human may come up with.
Right.
And if you can make room for the fact that you in your human form are not going to be able to encompass what it is to be.
You said it just last half hour, the very first thing almost that you said.
And so to engage in the mystery of what is your purpose. Because the exploration of your limitations, and to understand your ego is limited, to understand the boundaries of your ego, to understand the boundaries of your mental thought processes, and even to understand the boundaries of your emotions as well as your body. Goodness, your body's the first thing that teaches you about boundaries, honestly, because you have to know where everything is spatially. That is your first experience with beginning to understand what boundaries are. So boundaries for your body, most of us can wrap our heads around that. Boundaries for your mental aspect, most people try to understand that, and if they don't, the tendency is to want to dumb down everybody else because they don't get it. Or the emotion. Now that I find fascinating, because the boundaries of your emotion can be very tricky, because your interactions with other people have a tendency to have blurry boundaries, especially when you're little. You must learn and cultivate the ability to distinguish between your feelings and another's feelings. You do need to have a boundary there. It doesn't mean you don't have compassion, but you understand what is yours and what is not. Because without that, the physical body goes into responses just by watching somebody else go through something. So to understand that boundary, and also understand that when you understand these boundaries, you are larger, greater than those boundaries. You're seeing the boundary line, which means that your vantage point is higher up to see where that boundary is.
That's so important. We have to reiterate that. The fact that you understand that your body, your mind, your emotions, that you can find the limits of them. It may not be the easiest thing, but you can find the limits. You say, I can think all the way out to here, but then I know that beyond that is the unknowable. Not that it doesn't exist. My emotions are all this, but then there are those that are beyond that. There is a boundary. My body certainly has boundaries. Once you see that, And what you said is so important. You must realize that to see something, you have to be outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, if you're a fish in the water swimming, the water is the universe. It is endless. When you step outside, when you're standing on the land and you look at the water, you say, yes, there's the water and here's the land. I'm outside of it. There is all the wonderful things I can think about. And then there's that which is outside it. The thing you realize when you still the mind, and the Buddha, the Buddhists also control the emotions. They use asceticism to show you the limits of hunger, of cold, of all. So the body. They do all those three things and others to let you finally realize that you're outside of them all. We talked a little bit. I know we're running short on time. So when you have an existential crisis, when your life is suddenly put into an extreme focus, you will die tomorrow, or you will die. And all that you thought that you were is now in essence torn away, and you're faced with something which is beyond your ability to think about. It's beyond your body. It's beyond emotion. You reach that point. You step that one more step, and you realize that life has no meaning, but I am, regardless. I am beyond my death. I am beyond all things that I thought were me. I'm beyond I.
Mm-hmm.
You're just am. And people get there in that extremis. And you don't have to get there, but that's the way many people get there. They get there right at the end or right before the end. They say, it's okay because it had no meaning and it didn't need to. It never needed to. What is the meaning of life is in and of itself the wrong question. It's just the wrong question.
Well, again, there's a lot of assumptions that are made when you make that statement. And the assumption is that you already know what life is. And you just, that blows my mind. It's like, okay, so you know what life is.
Isn't that funny? Because what do people do? They always have these little cartoons, Margaret, where somebody's traveling up all the way up to the top of the mountain to visit the guru. And what do they want to ask the guru? Oh, great guru, what is the meaning of life?
Mm.
And a good guru goes, get me a peanut butter sandwich.
Right. Right, because it means that the exploration hasn't really taken off for you. You're still stuck in your own ego perspective. You haven't taken a step out and changed the perspective. You haven't even gone to the you side. Because you have, in a relationship, there's an I and there's a you. Or I and I are in the other. You haven't even gone to the other side.
Come to the other side.
to get that perspective of what a person is having in their relationship with you. What a thought. Let's put people always say put yourself in the other's shoes. Well, it's like literally sit there in your relationship and pretend what it's like to be the other person and how that relates to you, your relationship with this. Okay.
And those are the baby steps, and they're good steps.
Yes, but this is what I mean. You've got to break out of the ego that it's all related to me and nobody else. Because when it's all related to you and nobody else, all you get is that progressive down the drain and dropping into nothingness.
But even that, like I said, even the nihilists, when they get all the way down the real and they get to the end of thought, there's still the step they could take. You said, I've reasoned myself all the way down to where there is no meaning to life. And the step that they don't take is they say, yet I am. Once you can go on either side. You can go all the way, let's say, up, and realize that you found the boundaries of everything. You found the outer part of yourself, and still you are beyond this. Or you can go all the way down the drain to the very nihilist of nihils and realize there is nothing, that all form is meaningless, and then go one more step, and you are outside the other side. And you say, yet I am. The I am encompasses it all, the nadir of nothingness and the pinnacle of everything else, all that you think is. And the I am is outside of it all. You know, the wonderful phrase, I am who am. It's translated in many, many different ways. But the essential word is am. And it's something we have a problem with because, you know, amming, it doesn't flow well. It's not a good thought construct, which is what words are.
Well, it's the idea, not a thought construct.
Exactly.
But I'd like to just share this. You know, when you're down that drain and it's so deep, and I remember after we had lost Christopher, and my heart was so broken. You know, you're wondering, oh my God, how can I take my next breath? Your heart's broken because the one that you love so dearly is no longer there. And I sat there and I said, oh, why is my heart still beating? Because my heart is broken. Yeah, that's the mental construct right there. How can my heart be beating when my soul and the rest of me is so broken? And the brokenness, there's no words to describe it. It's lost, it's vast. But my heart still beats. You are so much more. That to me basically said, thank God you're there, Lord. Made this body able to beat even though I don't want it to. And that's that. When you get to nihilism, you don't want to live anymore, but you're still alive. Why is that?
Right. The edges of all of this, the edges of experience, of emotion, of thought, of non-existence, all of it gets you to a certain point. Whatever this large thing which you can think about or feel about or experience through the physical, it's a very, very large thing. It's quite vast in and of itself. All experience is quite vast. And yet, beyond all that, you reach the edges, and there is yet a step to take beyond it, and that's the am. The am has to be there first. If you aren't a consciousness, if you aren't an am, none of the rest can come. And that's it. There's the meaning of life. We wrapped it up in about 58 minutes. So you can go ahead, you just write your books and do all that stuff. That's all fine. But we won't ask for copyright. And I think that's the end of the show.
All righty.
And there'll never be another one. We're done. The Soul of the Everyman's done.
What?
Anyway, I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. Lord help us. And thank you for listening.